Hello, my name is David Brickman, and I'm a photographer based in Albany. This work is part of an extended body of work that I began in the early 1990s, photographing in the neighborhood that my studio was in and the adjacent neighborhood. They are West Hill and Arbor Hill. My current studio is in Arbor Hill, so for all that time I've been present in those neighborhoods. I actually lived there too for about 15 of those years. This work started when I was first really delving into color photography after having focused on black and white photography exclusively for about 20 years. And so I was getting a handle on color being a more important element in the work. The early work from this body doesn't look anything like this. It's more like street documentary. However, it does still feature color as a major element in the work. And that was influenced also in part by my background in painting. I was trained as a painter in college. I did actually stop painting just before I graduated in 1979. And I also made other work, collages in particular, with color. I wanted to get into color photography as a thing that mattered in itself, not like just, okay, I've got a roll of color film, I'll throw it in the camera and see what happens. I was really intent that the pictures needed to be in color. So that was the driving force behind that transition for me all those years ago. What's happening now in the work, as you can see, is it's gotten very abstract. These are still straight photographs. I'm not manipulating them in any way, though I do shoot digitally now. I'm not using digital techniques to change the way the picture looks. It's not a painting at all in that sense, not like a digital painting. It's a straight color photograph taken from life. I find these scenes and I find the picture I want from what's there, what's available there. So the early neighborhood photographs, as I was saying, are more documentary in nature, personal, but also showing the place, showing more of the place and what it's about. And some of those pieces are actually in the collection here at the Albany Institute. So it's a nice feeling for me to have these works hanging here now in the same place that some of the early examples are permanently housed. That's a nice feeling. One of the other influences on this current work, which I've been doing for about 12 years or so, is painting itself. I am looking at a lot of painting. I've been writing about art professionally for a very long time, over 30 years, and I continue to write critical articles that I publish on a blog. So I'm looking at all kinds of art all the time, and the influence of all that art that I've been seeing over the decades really started to seep into my own work. I found that though in my painting background I wasn't making any abstract art. Over time, I came to really appreciate abstract painting, particularly those wonderful abstract expressionist Americans from the 50s and on. And so I got the idea that it might be fun to try to make some abstract pictures and see what happens. So I was leaning in that direction for a bit and then found that it was going well. And so I decided to just keep going and really push it all the way to that point. Some of these pictures are specifically influenced by certain painters. Some of my favorites include Helen Frankenthaler, Adolf Gottlieb. Of course, I love Mark Rothko. And so when I see something out there that reminds me of the feeling of that work, I'll move in on it and try to make a good picture of what I'm finding there. So this is a good example of that. This is called Still Here. The title has a double meaning for me. It refers to the painter Clyfford Still, whose vertical brush strokes and shapes are a little bit similar to these shapes, and also to the fact that I am finding myself still making art after having had a pretty long hiatus. These are actually the first pieces that I'm showing in a significant exhibition since about 12 years ago. I was in the Mohawk-Hudson Regional, also here at the Institute in 2008. That was the last time I submitted to this exhibition. So this is kind of a coming out for me. And that title is part of that. The other piece has a different genesis, okay? It is actually named Mood Indigo. So I'm responding to the look of the piece, but also one of my other influences, and an influence of the abstract expressionist painters, is jazz. So I was thinking about musical titles for some of my works as well, and that's one of them. So this picture, one reason that I chose to make this picture is that it's unusual for me to find what we have here, where the overpainting is in white, or such a standout color. Typically, what I'm photographing very often, not always, as you'll see in a minute, but what I'm photographing is usually overpainted graffiti. And so, normally, the person doing that, whoever it is trying to match the background color. It's unusual to see such a contrast. Also, they're almost always rolling it on with a roller, and you end up with rather geometric shapes, rectangular shapes, which I have used in many of my pictures, and they work great. But in this case, I was drawn to that difference, the much more gestural strokes in these shapes, along with the contrasting color. And white, frankly, I don't think I've seen white covering anywhere else yet. The background color, this sort of dark burgundy, is a nice, good color, right? And additionally, you have a third color, which is important here. You've got this gray. Here, we're looking at, I think it's cement or stucco, repairs to some cracks, and again, you get some nice gesture, you get some nice texture, and you have a third color. So it's just a really limited palette of colors that go together well in concert, like a chord. So that was just a nice coming together of things for me. So you want to make sure, I have to go out and take the picture at the right time. If the sun is directly on the subject, usually that's a problem. It needs to be either in shadow, or it could be an overcast day where you have no sun and shadow. That's often the best lighting to take color pictures under. So this picture has an entirely different story behind it. The subject here is a building right on the borderline between Arbor Hill and West Hill. And this blue building I have photographed I don't know how many times, many. In fact, an earlier picture of the same building was in the 2007, I think, or 2008 Mohawk-Hudson Regional. So it's really been a favorite subject of mine since the beginning of these neighborhood pictures. In this case, you've got a building that was always painted blue and has seriously faded. And I did photograph it when it was all faded, and that was kind of nice with a lot of white pulling through the blue. At this time, they had started to repaint the building, and very luckily for me, they hadn't finished. So they're spraying on the paint and maybe brushing it. It's very soft, it's very expressive, but this is how it was. I saw this, I said, I've got to get there and take these pictures before they finish. So they were brushing on a much richer color, this really intense indigo color. So I was very attracted to the color, and particularly to these odd shapes and configurations. And I was able to make this picture. It turned out to be a very moody picture, kind of a gloomy, almost spooky flavor to it. So that's fine with me. It's different. Also, as you see, it's vertical versus being a horizontal. It's a lot harder, I find, to make these pictures succeed as verticals. Once in a while, I'll go out and just intentionally make only verticals and see if I can succeed at that. In any case, here it is, sort of my favorite blue building in the latest version, Mood Indigo. It's been great talking to you about these works, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the exhibition. Any questions?